It's Kurt Porter. Like, comment, and subscribe. And today's title, Michael Jackson almost lost everything. Let's get into it.
Gosh, have we got the most amazing guest for you. This guy has worked with legends in the building. I mean, I don't even know how to say it. It's Michael Jackson, Prince, everyone. If you are famous, Londell McMillan has worked with you. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here.
I mean, I am so excited to pick your brain, especially because Michael Jackson's biopic just came out and it blew past expectations. It's over 300 million in just over a week.
And counting.
And counting, exactly. It's the largest biopic ever. And even though it got savaged by reviews, whatever, the fans were like, you know what? We don't care. We still love him. And despite the fact that
Michael Jackson got a big fan base, man. The man made good music. He one of the best that touched the mic. Man, I gotta go see that movie, by the way, too.
You know, Michael had some lawsuits. He had some, PR problems. There were allegations. And the fans are like, but we still love Michael. And why do you think that this biopic was so big?
It was so big because he was gigantic. He was just a phenomenon. He was big and he was sweet. You know, usually people that famous, that big are people who you somehow look at with a genre side. And despite all the allegations, you know, he was acquitted of all of that. And he's so lovable and so talented. And let's not forget the music.
Yeah.
The music is what it is. It's just fantastic.
It's iconic.
Man, I've seen a couple songs on YouTube. A lot of views, man. About 1 billion, man. This man made good music, man. The numbers don't lie.
Yeah, it's hit songs, some of the greatest compositions ever recorded.
So how did you meet him and when did you start working with Michael?
I met Michael through his publicist at the time after he was coming back from Bahrain.
Okay, what year was this?
This was in, I would say, 2004, 5-ish.
Okay. What was he doing in Bahrain?
Well, after he was acquitted of the criminal charges that many people want to still keep him saddled with, he made a deal with the Prince of Bahrain where they were going to make a Middle Eastern kind of Disney.
Really?
Really.
Like a Neverland in Bahrain?
But huge, but like Walt Disneyland type thing. And after several years, he wanted to come back. It didn't go as planned. And I'm known as the fixer, the one to get people out of their contracts and problems. And I helped to get him out of that agreement that he had at the time. This is all publicly reported.
Of course. Yeah.
And so,
you my lawyer and I'm paying you all this money. You better get me out this mess, man. Hell yeah. Take this pressure off my back, man.
He wanted to come back home, and then I got him out of that agreement, and we had to do this in the Royal Courts of London. And we negotiated a settlement over in the UK, and he came back to the United States.
So you kind of rescued Michael from the Middle East, really, because those contracts are real difficult to get out of.
They're very difficult, and they're governed by the jurisdiction of UK law.
Right.
Many of the Middle Eastern and other African nations and all of these other countries, they use the UK instead of the United States as a choice of forum.
Of course they do. When he came back, what did you and Michael devise together?
Well, what we devised was that he was trying to save himself and his assets because, you know, he had bought the Beatles catalog.
Yes.
Neverland was in trouble. And he really wanted to take care of his kids. Those were the most important things in his life at that time. And so being a great parent was like the top of mind. And I just observed him as being a parent. And there's this very funny story where he was at the FAO.
Michael got a lot of kids. He got about like probably 5.
Schwartz store.
Oh boy.
And I think it was Vegas. And he went in the store and he tried to buy the whole store out.
Oh boy.
And then there's a story. I'll let people go look at the TV show and find out what happened.
Too much money, man.
Yeah, that is nuts. There were some chatter and newspaper articles written that at one point Michael was having massive financial difficulties, which, you know, and when we talk about his shopping habit, we know that he did like to walk into places and be like, I'll take the whole thing. And because at one point he had so much money, but he was overspending to the point where they're saying you're going to lose the catalog and you need to really shore up your finances. So what happened with that? Did you help save his finances?
I help save his assets and his finances, and liquidity is always an issue of not just having, you know, the assets, but also what's the cash flow.
Right.
You know, how much is available for you to spend, and are your spending patterns exceeding your debt obligations and so forth, right?
100%.
So Michael, you know, wasn't just a spendthrift person or your spender. He also was a giver. He was the biggest philanthropist, you know, I think in entertainment's history. And Prince might have been number 2. But they were always either 1 and 2 in something.
We'll get to him. But here's the deal. I remember, because I was at the New York Post at the time, and I remember writing one of the first articles saying Michael Jackson has a cash problem. And my editor was saying, no way, he's worth 600 million or whatever, hundreds of million. And I remember saying, yeah, but he's blowing like 30 million a day or something. You know, he would
got
have
it like
problems.
that. He got it like that.
How did you deal with it? Would you say, did you have to put Michael on a budget?
I didn't have the authority to put him under a budget. I think that, you know, at some point he did mature into realizing that he had to be here for his children, and his children became his priority, and he started to realize that his assets were his gateway to taking care of it.
As you get older, you start to think, you get more smarter, and you realize he had to calm down, man.
His children and furthering his dreams and continue to finance, you know, all the things that he wanted to do. He was an entrepreneur, but hey, many businesses have financial issues, right? That's why they lay people off. That's why they have to get debt. That's why they do all kind of partnerships, strategic alliances.
Well, speaking of partnerships and alliances, how did you save Neverland Ranch? Because for years, there was speculation that there's no way it was going to have to be foreclosed. How did you save Neverland?
Well, we looked at...
Man, I ain't gonna lie. I want to buy Neverland. Yo, that's all I got, son. Y'all got me. Y'all gonna help me out?
The equity of his portfolio, and we just basically refinanced it. We did a debt restructuring, and we went out and financed it just as like a core. I started out as a corporate lawyer,
right?
So before I got involved in entertainment, you know, debt, finances, refinancing, and actually finding someone that would actually take that risk.
And what is going on with Neverland today? Where does it stand? Who has control over it?
Well,
commercial, man.
The Memorial Day sale is officially on at Raymore Flanagan, and you can save up to 30%. And
well, to my knowledge, the estate sold it, and I'm not sure who the current owner of the property is, but at the time it was part of Michael's dream to always want to really create an amusement and a loving and playful atmosphere for young children.
Right.
And I think his desire to want to, you know, provide so much for children kind of led to many of these allegations that, quite frankly, I personally think is false, because I knew him and I knew his heart. And he wasn't the type of person I think that would want to hurt children. He may not have just realized that some of the optics and some of what he was doing may lead him to the appearance of impropriety rather than doing anything that was not proper.
Right, like maybe a sleepover isn't the right thing.
When the hate don't work, they start telling lies.
To do,
even though when you're Michael Jackson or anyone ever you're adult, perhaps. But do I think that Michael Jackson would harm a child? I personally do not, and no one has actually pinned it and stuck that on him today. I want to say that that, because a lot of people still to this day continue to kind of really try to pin him as a pedophile, and that is not what has been proven, not only in a court of law, but even in some of these stories that you see with the stories flip-flop over and over.
Right. I mean, we have had recently, I believe the 5 siblings came out to the New York Times once again making allegations, but when Michael was alive, it was a different kind of story and nothing was proven.
And, you know, all of these different people, you know, and I don't want to argue against my own legal profession, they have lawyers.
Mm-hmm.
Lawyers know how to make stories and create stories and get paid from stories. So
right.
You always have...
That's their job. Your job is like to lie.
To just watch, you know, how things are being done.
Well, you know,
or make things sound good. That's your job.
What's fascinating to me is that Michael, in the end, before his death, did seem to want to create a stable environment for his children. Now, unfortunately, after his death, it seems like there's been a lot of chaos. And you were hired, I believe, by his mother.
Immediately after he passed. His mother said that Michael always told her, if anything ever happened to me, call Londell and he'll make sure you're fine. Upon his death, 2-3 days after that, we entered into the courts in the State House of California for her to become the administrator of his estate. She was appointed the administration rights to his estate immediately, and then later on, there were a number of people who said that there was a will and then there was a trust. Mm-hmm. But at that time, that we didn't know of a trust or a will at that time.
Understood. And I believe she had some issues with some of Michael's children over how much money was being spent, how much she was getting. Why is this happening? Why are they still fighting over money where, frankly, everyone is taken care of for the rest of their life and their kids will be taken care of?
You know, we have a big family and you've had...
Come on, man. No need to be fighting over money, man. Stop it.
A family that, you know, see things differently.
Mm-hmm.
They were formerly in a band, in a group. You're going to have differences. And then when you're talking about hundreds of millions, billions of dollars, and different members of your family have different people in their ears, you're going to always be, unfortunately, subject to dissent and contention. It's an unfortunate truth of these situations. She did the very best that she could, and she held out and tried to employ Michael's wishes for as long as she could. But then at some point, she just said, "Hey, what's in the best interest of her children was the most important. Of his children was one of the most important things." I was able to get her the the custody rights, mm-hmm. with Debbie Rowe getting visitation. Mm-hmm. So Mrs. Jackson was able to raise the children right after that, as well as get her to be taken care of financially.
That's wonderful. So was Debbie Rowe part of their lives? Was she able to visit the kids, but Mrs. Jackson actually had the children?
That's correct. Debbie Rowe did have visitation rights, but Mrs. Jackson was able to receive the custody rights in a court legal proceeding that I was a part of to help her to do that. And she had the letters of administration initially until others came in and trustees removed her as the administrator and took over from the estate.
Were you involved with her when that happened?
Yes.
When she was removed? What was that like, and what was her stance? Because I remember it did get quite messy, and it was embarrassing.
It was a struggle. It was a struggle. It was a fight at the time. Mm-hmm. It was many, many years ago, and it was something that actually led me into why I chose to fight for Prince. Mm-hmm. But at that time, fighting for Michael, it was a very difficult time for Mrs. Jackson. And but she hung in there, and I hope that she's lived a beautiful life because she's a beautiful woman.
That's lovely. And what do you think about the most recent battle over Michael's estate? It literally never seems to end. All of a sudden, Paris is coming out and saying John Branca, the other trustee, are misappropriating funds, and she thinks she can do better. Even though, frankly, she also is a recovering addict and has not gone to school for economics or finance. What do you think is going on there?
when you have an estate this massive and this very public with such notoriety, you're gonna always have people who think they can do things better. They're gonna want more. They're gonna be very critical of those who are in the decision-making seats. And in some cases, those of us who are in decision-making positions, I mean, we can do things that may be better than what we're doing on an occasion or two. I think by all accounts, the Michael Jackson's estate has generated an exorbitant amount of money, whether it's because they sold assets rather than created value. That's one thing versus another.